We've all been there. Our last point of health and only one enemy away from winning. Sweat starts forming on your brow, and all you can do is pray for luck. RNG is a weird thing. The calculations tend to happen behind the scenes, and all you can do is guess. And even when you do know the likelihood of a specific event, you still have to take the risk. Luck can be incredibly infuriating, and yet we keep putting RNG in games. So the question stands: why do we love RNG? RNG impacts many different aspects of games. The most classic example might be hit chance. Often related to a character's speed or hit level, hit chance simply is the percentage chance for any one attack to hit. But RNG impacts things such as dodge chance, drop rates, critical hits, and even level creation. Certain games can make do without RNG. Say a headshot is always a critical hit, the levels always look the same, or you will always find an item in the same spot. There's nothing to say that RNG for sure is better or worse than absolutes. It's just different. Although with RNG, game makers introduce the possibility of painfully unlucky sequences. Personally, I tend to really enjoy luck or RNG, depending on the way it's implemented, of course. In a skill-based game like Counter-Strike, luck is the main cause of frustration for me, other than my teammates. Aiming on a guy's head just for the random accuracy to miss undermines any player's time and effort spent on training your aim. However, you could argue that this creates new playstyles and ways to outsmart your enemies instead. If you keep missing, try to get behind your enemy, for example. RNG exists in many different genres, but we often associate it with RPGs. The early era of role-playing games used RNG to create variation between characters, moves, and encounters. Technically, it all started with D&D and its usage of die to determine an outcome. Rolling for initiative is similar to the advantage system certain games have. If you or an enemy attacks from behind, you get the advantage of attacking first, while rolling for initiative determines who attacks first. Rolling for attack is the same as your hit chance on any move. Your speed stats impact your dodge rate in some cases, and rolling for evasion gives you a higher chance to not get hit. But RNG exists in basically any board game, and while I would love to talk about the history of Monopoly, that's not what this video is about. So let's skip ahead to a more modern time. The first computer RPGs were created in the 1970s, but the genre wasn't quite defined until the 80s, as a few series came to define the cornerstones of the genre. The tiled graphics, the creative actions, and gameplay mechanics we associate with the genre today all originated from these early RPG games who took inspiration from tabletop role-playing. In the late 80s, role-playing games had spread worldwide, and JRPGs started to show up. In 1986, the first Dragon Quest was released. In 1987, it was the first Final Fantasy, and in 1989, Mother. Today, most people's introduction to RPGs come in the form of Pokemon. With stats that impact who attacks first, the moves having different hit rates, and the chance of not capturing every Pokemon. The series has introduced the concept of RNG to millions of people. Obviously, the RNG isn't the reason for why the series has become the largest franchise in the world. but I believe that it does have some influence on why we keep coming back to it. There's a reason the main mechanics haven't changed for almost 30 years, despite the jump to 3D open worlds. As you throw a Pokeball, there's a slight hint of fear, excitement, and then a short climax. Every throw, every catch is a series of feelings that lead to just pure enjoyment. And this brings us back to that initial situation. With your final Pokemon on the brink of fainting, all you can do is pray as you select your attack. The rush you get as the critical hit lands and you win your battle is unmatched. And these games allow for this feeling over and over and over again. RPGs have evolved and those tile and turn-based cornerstones have been dismantled piece by piece. Xenoblade is a 3D RPG where positioning your character correctly, choosing your party members, and leveling specific skills can make or break a fight. And while you do have to wait for your skills to cool down, the battle continues after you pick an action, moving it away from that turn-based fighting system many people are used to. You have a lot of control over what actions you perform and in what situation to use what ability. But there's always a chance for an attack to miss. As you play through the game, enemies drop new items when they die. This RNG impacts not only the effectiveness of your weapons, but also the look of your characters. You gain new outfits based on the items you pick up, and being able to match and choose between different pieces of armor is actually way more fun than you'd expect. RNG that impacts drop rates exists in many different games: first-person shooters, open worlds, and roguelikes. If we look at roguelikes or roguelites, the whole point is to have addictive yet simple mechanics that get its variation from RNG. The maps, the enemies, and the items you pick up are never the same. And while sometimes you get upgrades that keep making your character stronger, most of your items or powers reset as you die. While these games can have items that impact your crit or dodge chance, these events don't necessarily have the same impact as they do in, say, an RPG. As you hack and slash away in Hades, you're expected to get a couple of crits in. The screen is full of enemies and different attacks, and dodging even one of them can go by completely unnoticed. Comparatively to an RPG where a lucky dodge or crit can win you an entire fight, roguelikes don't put as much emphasis on one single attack, but rather a full so-called run. A run can be defined by the items you pick up, the upgrades you choose, or the levels you get, but most of the time it's a combination of all of it. You might get an unlucky map but then pick up really strong items, or face easy enemies but none of your upgrades synergize. There are thousands of possibilities, sometimes even infinite variations, and on top of that, it's common to have different characters or weapons that allow for that same amount of variety. As you play through these games, you might have builds, that is, specific items and upgrades that you look for. This turns every new item, every pickup, into a slight gamble. Sometimes you have to spend money to receive an item, sometimes you have to choose between different upgrades, and sometimes you have to pick different playstyles. This kind of RNG keeps you on your toes and requires the player to constantly adapt to new situations. Being able to make decisions but have RNG impact the result happens often. In auto battlers and card games, you can impact your team, the board, and your hand, but what cards you pull or what characters you get is RNG based. While an auto battler divides the pull chances between the available characters, a card game like Hearthstone, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Marvel Snap randomizes the order of the cards. This can happen either at the start of the game or the game divides the pull chances between the cards in your deck. Deck building is all based on chance. If you really want a specific card on your hand, you should have multiple copies of it in your deck for a higher chance to draw it. But adding multiples of a single card also takes away from the available spaces for other cards. So building your deck requires not only great understanding of the game, but also understanding of the pull chances. Compared to an auto battler, where you don't have to build a deck but rather a team, card games require a lot of planning and research to maximize your win chance. In an auto battler, you're presented with characters and have to make the decision of what team you want to take a chance on. There are often random circumstances that changes your plans in the middle of the game. You might not be able to level up your characters because of unlucky shops. An item might change your team's strongest character, or a higher tier character could impact your entire team's lineup. While the experience is quite different in these two types of games, they're based on one simple commonality: RNG. Despite creating a deck, it's still random what you get on hand. Even if you know what characters are strong, you're never sure which ones you will get. This randomness not only makes the experience more intense, but it also removes anxiety. When you're removed from some of the responsibility, it's easier to not feel overwhelmed. I'm not saying you can't be good or even have a larger impact than the RNG yourself, but for a casual player, these games become a way to simply sit back, relax, and not have to worry too much. Most deck builders and auto battlers give you access to the available cards and characters, either for free or through microtransactions. But there will always be a core collection that every player has. Compare this to looter games, where more often than not, the main weapon, armor, or abilities you use are dropped from enemies or picked up from boxes or breakables. Looter games aren't specified to one genre. There's first-person shooters like the Borderlands series, dungeon crawlers like Diablo or Torchlight, and even third-person action games like Fable or Dark Souls to some extent. What all of these games have in common is that they all are RPGs in one way or another. While these games have a lot going for them in a lot of ways, the RNG of drop rates can both be a blessing and a curse. In Borderlands, we have some bosses that will always drop their legendary weapon as you kill them. But in 99% of the cases, you'll end up having to reload the area a couple of times just to get that weapon. We often relate grinding to enhancing one's power through gaining more EXP and leveling up. And while there are skill points in a lot of these games, sometimes the true power spike comes in relation to a specific item drop. You can always count on gaining EXP, but you can never count on a specific drop rate for a weapon. Even if a boss has a 25% chance of dropping its specific item, you might still have to fight them 5, 10 or even 20 times before you actually get it. And as drop rates go lower and lower, the amount of potential fights increase exponentially. Sometimes the weapons aren't always the same either. Their base stats can change, they might have slightly different abilities, or even different damage multipliers. Sometimes it's not only about getting the item, but also getting a good version of said item. But looters aren't based around grinding. The whole point is that any enemy can drop a great item. Now, some enemies have higher chances of dropping something useful, some enemies can't drop the highest tier of item, and sometimes you just can't use the item someone drops. But the point is that you will find many items, since every enemy has a drop chance, and you will have to fight many enemies, so your loadout will change constantly. Even if you find an item you like that's strong and you enjoy its playstyle, at some point there will be a new item that has better stats or a different ability you like more. While you can get used to a specific playstyle, you can never really grow too attached to any one item, spell, or weapon. As a wizard, you can't always rely on one sorcery. As a warrior, you can't use the same sword versus the first and last boss. And as a vault hunter, you can't use all of the same status effects on all of your weapons. The changes to your loadout keeps the game fresh through the entire experience, and while grinding for a specific item can be tedious, unless you know that there is a specific item to grind for, most people won't feel the need to fight the same boss over and over. RNG is a way for us to experience the excitement of gambling without the monetary risk. It keeps games fresh and interesting despite hundreds or even thousands of hours of playtime. RNG can have a crucial role in creating intense moments, but it can also take a back seat and create an environment that allows for new experiences every time. RNG also introduces chance, which can become infuriating depending on its implementation and a player's luck. You can take a chance on me and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Feel free to leave a like or comment your thoughts down below. My name's Turtlekun. Remember to eat well, sleep well, and I'll see you in the next video.